I thought I would just start with some images of our work. We have been working together for about 26, yeah, with Christina Sealey and Richard Oddie. We've been working together on various music projects for about the last 20 years.
21, yeah.
21, I guess. And during that time...
we started when we were, what, 8? So, maybe a little later.
And during that time, there's been a lot of developments in electronics for music and for playing, and especially for playing and live performance. And I thought we would start by going through some images of our live performances, just because it gives us a way to talk about the kind of instrumentation we're using and how we're creating sounds. We have a couple of projects that we focus on. One is a more ambient project called Antiform, and another one a more aggressive, I guess we call that, project called Orphx. And they both use various elements of experimental sound. The first images are from an Antiform performance. This is from 92, 93. And we're combining contact mic instruments, toys, and I kind of dug through and found a few bits and pieces to show what we're miking up our instrumentation with. To create live sound, also using, at the beginning of that time, there's a development in portable samplers, so we're using an 8-bit Mirage sampler that gave us the possibility of recording and manipulating sounds live. Also using other electronics like mixers and creating feedback and drones out of these types of instruments.
But I guess we still had, the structure was still tape-based, you know, I guess for many decades.
See that, the tape loops and...
A lot of people used to using those as the sort of the backbone. So we would have backing tracks on a 4-track, or in earlier days on just on a cassette, and use those as the foundation of the concert, and then be playing over top with a mix of go back to the image. We had like reel-to-reel tape loops and lots of effects pedals. Still use lots of effects pedals. The old sampler. What else can you see there? Some flutes in action. Whatever we could find, really. And I guess I think we're coming more from, as much from punk and sort of the fringes of punk, as much as, or more than, that kind of more academic tradition of electroacoustic music, but then sort of discovered that Stockhausen, Cage, etc., more through the music of the late 70s. Not that we were very old then, but I think both kind of attracted to music that was coming out of the sort of the fringes of the punk scene in the UK, fringes of kind of psychedelic music of the 60s that was in rock and pop, but then just pushed it into another zone.
I think that gives you an idea of that sound quality that's coming out from these.
So a lot of kind of loop-based stuff in the early days, and learning how to use sequencers. And I remember like we had some old, we were sort of a trio in the beginning, and our friend was sort of the computer expert. We had like an old Mac, I can't remember what era this was, but it was like you could run a sequencing program called Cakewalk, which was like super rudimentary. So you could, we figure out how to like sequence with MIDI, and like this was like a huge thing that you could, program beats instead of just playing them in direct. And
that's where, well, starting with the Orphx project, we were interested in more rhythmic sound for this, and then there was a lot more noise element, and as I mentioned, a bit more aggressive sound. And starting off with the same idea as the Antiform, using more acoustic, amplified acoustic instruments, power tools, saws, that sort of thing, amplified and distorted, put through effects, samples layered through that, vocals at the beginning as well too, and then began to move more into using the computer. So I'll just play an earlier track
this is a mix of stuff that's been programmed through MIDI with a few synths and samplers, and then overdubbing on top of the various things she mentioned, power tools, whatever we can find. It was really random kind of process of like getting an idea, getting a rhythm, and then, okay, what can we build on top of this? What's the feeling of it?
Rhythm created
sort of
through
layering
feedback as well.
and carving a layer.
Feedback of amplifiers, feedback of mixers, and then transforming the rhythms.
Skip so fast.
And then as we began to use the computer, things became a little bit more structured. We started with a program called Master Tracks, again, very rudimentary, and just allowed us to be able to record and arrange basic work, but it allowed us to get away from the 4-track and build up more layers of sound. And with that, we had our first release put out in the US, which then got the interest of a German label and enabled us to get live performance opportunities overseas. And that was a bit of a challenge for us as well, trying to decide how to perform what we're doing live and be able to carry it on a train or on a bus and sleep with it in a hostel and be able to do what we needed to do to be able to get around. It had to be portable. So we had to experiment with CD players. Mini discs had just come out at that time. Any way that we could layer sound, and again using that 4-track backing track as well too, which was necessary at that time to be able to create some of the sounds we were doing, and then processing our sounds through pedals, using contact mics.
This is like pre-laptop, or like they were quite expensive. This is like, what, early mid-90s.
Mm-hmm.
I remember seeing actually at the show people using laptops and being, oh wow, that's incredible to be able to have that power that you can just carry around instead of all this bags of junk that we had. But I mean, there's something to this kind of hands-on approach, right? So we can sort of talk about going through that phase, like sort of being obsessed with laptops and software, and then sort of after a few years thinking, oh, there's something missing, the tactile, having your hands on some effects pedals and like sort of feeling the sound in a way that you can't even with a controller. Sort of we end up kind of going back to some of this like tape-based, effects pedal-based stuff, at the same time using software.
And this is just another close-up from that performance, just being able to see really hands-on work that we're doing at this point. And again, the same kind of progression here, still working with the 4-track and different elements of backing work.
Feedback, yeah, a lot of feedback.
A lot of feedback circuits as well.
Just running
portable
mixers back in
old
themselves.
mixers that you could carry in your hands.
Change of effects pedals.
And then we moved into more heavy use of the computer with Cubase, Fruity Loops to create our music and to perform it live. And developing that, trying to develop a way to make it more live, and still being very frustrated at this point at being able to actually perform our sounds without relying on a structure that was already set out. In the Cubase, you can see like early controllers here, trying to experiment with ways to manipulate the sound, in addition to the effects processing that we were doing.
Do you have some kind of dance or stuff? So we started like I said, coming from sort of these fringes of rock and pop. Like if you think of like sort of the weirder tracks on early Velvet Underground albums, stuff like that, like back in the day, that was I think the sort of thing we were both interested in. And then discovering, as I said, this kind of older, more academic tradition of electroacoustic music. But
actually,
also being
the sound source, and I'll play this the accelerator.
Yeah, I could talk. Maybe we could play some of that. So yeah, and then discovering at this time in the 90s this whole tradition of noise music coming out of primarily out of Japan, but also UK, US. That was really about sort of anti-music, like no melodic structure, usually no rhythmic structure, just pure noise, sort of like the earlier stuff they were playing there, sort of sculpted noise. And being really excited about that, but also being really excited about what was then in this area a really vibrant techno and rave scene, like underground warehouse parties. And again, this kind of visceral sound where you just feel it in your guts, and wanting to take those kind of things and put them together. So this pulse of techno and some of those conventions, but then a more kind of pure physical sound. Those tend to be played quite loudly. And I think with that performance aspect being using the computers and having Cubase sort of, again, basically doing what 4-track tapes are doing, running these backing tracks and then playing over top, and starting to play more venues where it's all about kind of the physical space, people dancing at really loud volumes, and trying to play off the energy of the crowd while you're stuck to a 7-minute or 10-minute track you're playing over top of, so you can't respond to the crowd in an immediate way. And to me, that's the excitement of using Ableton Live. I'm sure you guys are familiar with this program. And so, as I said, we've kind of gone to a hybrid of software, that software particularly, and then with controllers, and then still using junk like feedback circuits and effects pedals, and now having that flexibility to draw out a track or jam and go whatever direction we want.
And that was my reason for including this photo, because I like this image because it shows our interaction on stage before being very separate and unable to actually really perform live the way we did when we first started out, and enjoying the possibilities of the sound, but yet the restrictions of the live performance. And in this way, with the Ableton Live that we've been using for this show, the ability to actually talk to each other and say, oh, why don't we play this? Let's take this on a little bit longer. And what direction do you want to go with this? And doing that in a really live way, and being able to completely manipulate the sounds live. We did an installation at the Art Gallery of Hamilton, and then a live performance to go with that as well too, which was more based on sounds from the city. And they went into building the sounds that went into the music that went along with a show of my paintings. I'm a visual artist as well. So we did a live performance for this and an installation which played within the gallery space for the duration of the show on 4 speakers.
Yeah, so this stuff was more explicitly informed by acoustic ecology and that sort of Canadian-based tradition that you're probably familiar with. And so at the same time that we were interested in this sort of extreme noise and psychedelic music, techno, but also acoustic ecology, and trying to actually put those together. And so this is one example as it plays on. There's a lot of location recordings that have been manipulated and then combined with these more rhythmic elements. So yeah, trying to take the feeling of a certain space. A lot of this was from around Hamilton, and then push it into these other kind of combinations of genres. So rather than pure acoustic ecology, we've done some of that as well, but interested in kind of putting those different worlds together.
We've moved into modular, kind of moving back in time a little bit to using modular synthesis for a lot of our sound building, always looking for new ways to create sound and have something that is unique, and that's that we can manipulate in a really hands-on way. So adding again to that live performance, being able to really control and change the sounds live. In some way, when we were talking earlier about putting together two oscillators, those patterns that are made between two fighting oscillators with an FM synthesis, a lot of those types of sounds are used to then build rhythms from as well. So they're starting points for the rhythm parts of the tracks. So they create different rhythms that are built right out of that synthesis and can be manipulated live and changed. And then, but still fairly portable to be able to take with us across seas as well.
Plus, people get very excited when they see a modular synthesizer. It always generates interest.
And this is we became finally beginning to get picked up by more electronic arts festivals. This is from MUTEC, Montreal Festival, and we're nominated for a Quartz Award for electronic music in Paris. So we had the opportunity to go there and work with a live visual artist as well, doing live video, which was an interesting element to work with the way that we were composing sound. So some final local shows. But interesting, I think, just from our last, from our beginnings, with more hands-on work to this kind of final type of setup where we can manipulate and create the sounds that we want to, but be able to change things in that live setting and have something that feels a little bit more natural. I'll just play one last short clip just to show where the changes in our sound as well.
Can we take questions, or should we?
Afterwards, I think.
Afterwards.
We've got some time afterwards.
Okay.
Anybody's welcome to stick around. The next concert's at 5:30 in any case. So
okay.
We need to wrap up here and then
okay.
any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.